Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. This is Shirley with Spirit of Matter broadcasting to you on a moon day, soul hour. Ascendant is ruled by Jupiter in the mid-phase of Sagittarius, and the mid-heaven is in 1 degree Libra. Now this is soul hour. The moon is in 7 degrees Pisces, also ruled by Jupiter, and we have a T square between Mars, Chiron, and the Sun on 21 degree each of Mars in Cancer, Sun in Libra, and Chiron in Aries. With Mars ruling Chiron and Jupiter still at 21 degree, sextiling Chiron from Gemini in the 7th house. So first of all, a little bit about the tensions that we see right now in the air, and a little bit of thoughts or eurekas about resolutions. So right now, there is a tension between the action that we take, the intelligence that we have, the understandings that we have, Sun in Libra, and our emotional reaction, and a certain wound around sovereignty that we face. So our actions, our intention with that wound on the sovereignty. You can interpret that in many ways. You can interpret that even though that stretches on my sense of sovereignty, or stretches on the wound or insecurity I have about myself, I do take action on the matter. That's one interpretation. And the action is in a disarray of the type of balance that is in Libra. For example, today I talked about the importance of housing, and there was an organization that is in favor of women's rights, supposedly, and they were looking for instructors, to give lectures and so on. And I simply wrote, well, if people don't have a place to live, what am I supposed to teach them about healthy sexuality? If you cannot say yes, no, and maybe because you don't have a place to stay, how can I give them education for something that they cannot currently apply? So this is how, with the desire to have, let's say, willing consent, is in collision with the current situation of housing. And this is me acknowledging the fact that the housing situation can affect internal dynamics within the residence. So this is how, for example, that would be frictional with, hey, let's educate everybody about how important it is to say yes, no, and maybe according to so-and-so, but it's actually not contradicting. It's just the fact that we must tend to the circumstances outside of the conversation to allow the conversation to be. But the friction still does exist, The friction of being able to say yes, no, and maybe, because you need resources. And this is regardless of gender, So that is just one way in which that tension can be resolved or accommodated by structure. Saturn, which is opposing Mars, 21 Saturn is opposing the current Mars, and Saturn is in Pisces. So the worldview, the paradigm, the awareness of structure as an agent that can allow or disallow sexual energy flow, good communication, and even availability of housing itself. If we understand what the importance of good relations, and we set value on everybody being able to say the yes, no, and maybe we need to accommodate that architecture-wise, architectonically, so that would be facilitated with the structure of organizations, our housing, our cities, villages, as well as the structure underground, because Pluto is still in Capricorn. We think about the caves, but also the monasteries and the spiritual activity taking place there, and how that affects on what's above the earth. So we tend to that. And another thing that comes up, okay, with this T square that's about to release, and you see how the point of mitigation brings us back to Jupiter, and we have the Jupiter-Mercury relation, is Jupiter retrograde in Mercury sign, which now rules Saturn and rules Pluto and rules Neptune. So Jupiter in Mercury sign is basically applied religion, applied philosophy, but also the practicality of religion. And here I want to go back. I want to go back to when I was first year student in politics and governance. Okay, one of our teachers, which later I would have the Corvan out me too situation with, and that was I already exposed as his doctor, I think, Ido Nevo. He's professor now, and yeah. So he's getting the credit finally for both the good things he did and the not good things he did. But this is actually a good teaching. And teaching was so, when Christianity took over Ireland and Northern Europe and so on, the bishops, okay, for the symbols that they made, they were inclusive of the symbols of the common community. Okay. Actually, if you go to Helwa's Astro, which has the third lunar mentioned talisman, one of the symbols that she has that looks like the cross, it is basically a plant, and that plant you would see it as, I think it is Ireland, but I'm not sure, in the church structure. Okay, so I was tending to philosophy of science, he was tending to the progress of politics and religion. So of course he would tell the religion story better than me. And the philosophical story, I think he's still dealing with his psyche. But the thing is that the bishops were integrating the symbolism of the local beliefs and traditions into Christianity, so to make it more acceptable. They still raped, sacrificed children, brutalized in Inquisition. Okay, that shit was still on, and there was also this supposed inclusivity. Why am I saying that? And this is taken away now from the story, or whatever the intention of the story was, and into our times, because in our times and towards 2030 there's a plan to make a one world religion, but we have to take a close look at our common ground, but also a close look at what is the point of the individual in shaping of how religion will look like, religion or the lack of will look like, in their own city, their own house, their own country, and so on and so forth. And one giant role that the individual has is understanding that religion is also a form of negotiation. This is where Jupiter is in the sign of trade, negotiation, children, civil war, technology as well. Okay? And this is exactly where, if you understand that, you have a point in advance over people that don't. Okay? If you get that, you have a point in advance over people that don't. If you think you are helpless in the face of religion, you just have to change here, change that. To some degree, this is true. We all compromise on how we show. One of the comments I was actually writing for Netherlands, the Twitter of Netherlands, was basically that I'm okay with putting my talisman underneath my shirt and showing respect, because that is preferred for me than religious oppression. Okay, but then they have to show they don't do religious oppression. And this is where you can see that we do compromise when it comes to our religion and so on and so forth. But then it's a question of what do we compromise and what is our values. For each person, they have their own things that are important to them. And when we set that as a standard, that does create an effect on what would be the religion. For example, in jupigemini now is co-present with Sedna. Sedna's story was the story of the Inuit. She's Inuit goddess, but she's ancient civilization for us, okay? We are all Inuit. That doesn't mean that I deserve rights of indigenous society, not in that appropriation sense, but in the sense that we all come from Inuit, so we're not disconnected from our origins, okay? And the story of Sedna, there are many versions. In essence, it was a young girl that did not find a person to marry because she was looking to be free both within or outside of relation. And her father couldn't accommodate, the village couldn't accommodate. Eventually she drowned, and when she drowned, entire village, entire tribe had to appease Sedna in order to receive food. So Sedna in Gemini, co-present with Jupiter at this time, at this year, okay, is reminding us of what we need to accommodate in any religion in order to have food. So it can be both the reverence to Inuit society that should not be taken away from their homes, and dealing with highest rates of suicide in the world, okay? While the society itself, I hear from parts of society in Canada that they are understanding the issues of domestic violence and incest are affecting society, and of course accessibility to food, but it's also for the world to allow and facilitate models to curate that. And if we're dealing with hermaphrodite codes that rule over the finances, then we need to change for the way that we grow people, in the sense that we allow people to be conceived and birthed and grow with love. So if we have to tend to that on an all-world level, and the fact that Inuit are not aware of that, I think, is opening a gate for humanity from its origin to accommodate for something that wasn't available for at least 9 to 12 millennia. And this is one thing where acknowledging that yes, your tribe, your family, your lineage, perhaps part of them took part in praxis of human sacrifice, of kidnapping children, okay, they didn't know better. Very simply put. They didn't know better. And of course, when you do that, that unnerves the balance between masculine and feminine, or yin and yang, on all levels. So being LGBTQ does not exempt you from the effect that it has on you, because it's basically if the yin and the yang, okay, if the polarities are not contained, then basically there's nothing to contain that which plays on the polarities, that which says I'm antithetical to the polarities, like gender non-conforming or no gender. It's like everything, okay, needs to be there. Just like if we don't accommodate for two genders, two spirit, or the various gender range, and we push them away to be receiving help only from crime organizations, radical places that would use them and abuse them, they become a sort of a Sedna story. And then they can only grow within hermaphrodite cults, which is insane torture, until person really wants to end the world because they want to end the suffering. Same as children with the rituals. Some of us are not even aware, because it's been hidden in plain sight, and some of the monasteries are underground. Okay? This is one giant chance we have to become aware and then unleash something for humanity that will make life better, not only on Earth, because wherever we go, we take that place with us. And I'd like to bring another story. This is a story that I told to someone today. So in my Facebook group of friends, there is a woman that built a house from the soil. She had a dream to build a house from the soil, and her view on housing transformed my architectonic view as well, which I didn't even have before, but then that contributed a lot to my thinking, as she is seeing the house as the womb outside the womb, as a womb that contains the residence. And I think in terms of yin and yang, this is also very correct. This is a structure. The structure is containing of the people. It's both playing on the polarity we have between Saturn, the destruction, and architecture as well, and the moon that is the people, and sun that is the leaders. So every people are leaders, leaders are people. I talk about that a lot in my videos. And so it was not surprising to me that after she made this dream come true and helped a lot of people with how is this therapy called, family constellation. So fourth house, okay? You're housing your grave, your ancestors, your upbringing, your sense of true happiness, or the lack of, a connection to the motherland, and so on and so forth. And after that, I read posts from her. She's traveling the world. I also noticed that when I was working my own soil, it's not my land, it's working my own soil, or not yet my land, I don't know, working my own soil and sitting on the soil, I would find myself very closely either at the airport, connecting with my other motherland, which is Netherlands, my fatherland, okay, which is Netherlands, or even with Northern Africa, which have roots in Northern Africa, Libya and Algeria. Even, okay, for the history of the family that was in Ukraine, the Crimea story, and the urge or the need to travel or to tend, okay, where's my passports or the things that facilitate that. And so as we go into the soil, we go into the house, going to the fourth house, we have a higher connection with the world. So think about the underground and what's going underground. The key to better integration in our galaxy is basically to go into the core of the earth and clear the waters of the well. Okay, so it's about moving the soil, can allow, let's say, for bay leaves to grow and refresh the water and bring in the water. Okay, I want you to look at Liu Lao. He's is a good resource about this type of soil architecture to bring in back the wealth of the land. It has holistic meaning because anything underneath the soil that pollutes it will come to effect. This is why I had to tend to the expendable children crisis, what could be underneath the soil of my village or city, because I already made the moves to bring life here and to reforest the desert. Now all the things that we need to grow life and all mistakes humanity has done along the way that we didn't know better, we now have to change. And of course I have the support of the soil and the waters of the wells on the ground to receive the intuition and the information and deliver it correctly to the world. So now you see that on the level of what people call the reset and so on, it is the connectivity that allows us to set a standards, okay, set a standards to whomever is arriving. And when we set the standards to whomever is arriving, there is an ease of the friction between those that arrive and those that are. The first thing you can think about is hospitality. But hospitality is not people pleasing. I did the chart of Finland, of King Leopold, and they had a 12th house Taurus. I think that or the later chart, the 12th house Taurus. But either way, there was this connection between Taurus and the 12th house through the moon. And so you think about if the place is invaded, or if people come in and they have a sauna and they have a coffee and they have, back then, unfortunately, it was used of women, which is why eventually kingdom would fall. Okay, the Pluto square, they didn't know Pluto back then, so they didn't even see that square to the women. Okay, it was in violation of women that they weren't even aware of yet, and that eventually led to the downfall, because there was no remediation. Okay, if you're not aware, you cannot remediate. But if you think about people coming in and they have the saunas and they're treated well, and they have if they have their own abundance to bring it, they can bring the abundance. So you establish connection rather than creating war. And abundance is kept by this connectivity that we preserve with nature, both learning from the ancestors of ancestors and rejuvenating. It's both the role of rejuvenation and the role of learning from our past that is important when we talk about longevity. So this is how jupigemini is reminding us that before we go on 2030, if right now we're about to embark in 2025, so you think about 2025, 6 is Cancer, 6, 7 Leo, 7, 8 Virgo, 8, 9 Libra, and then we're going to have Jupiter in Scorpio, which is of course a very nefarious place for Jupiter. Okay, when my psychologist Itamar Yaron, that is MK Ultra, which means he was both tortured, probably as child as well, because if you will hear for what this Wagner Fund does, or what the people who work with it does, and his work in diagnosing of children for the emergency center of the children, you understand it's a juncture where they kidnap children. So I think it's fair that you will not hear of him only as, I don't know, the monster or the this or the that, but also understand that for what he grew into, there was no structure that facilitated him getting out of the cult, at least not in Israel. And then he was perpetuating that on children. So this is important, okay, to be fair when I state that. But the time where I was in therapy there, Jupiter was in Scorpio. It was Jupiter invisible in Scorpio. And so Scorpio is a very deep place to be, because this is where, on the one hand, I would be shown of what I now know as satanic ritual abuse. And on the other hand, that was not nice experience with the MK Ultra thingy, and being targeted by it. Where you go to curate, you say, I'm going to take responsibility for me. I'm not going to go to litigation when I'm not tending to my own well-being yet, because I need to be in a place of clarity. You know, juristic process is not process of revenge, but process of alchemizing energy back to a place where we can prosper. And I was taking that path. To those who think that people are riding the waves of Me Too, I'm like, no. We were the waves that created Me Too, even from the place where a person did it for nefarious reasons. Okay, Jay-Z to knock off R. Kelly, and I believe Jag. Even that was created, that was the way it would knock off R. Kelly and not, for example, murder him, because it wasn't like it wasn't available. Because the waves were already building, and the waves were the people that were there before the Me Too. And so you see, 2030 is chosen with Jupiter in Gemini. It's chosen with Jupiter in Scorpio, invisible Jupiter in Scorpio. And that would be ruling Rahu. Okay? So us as society getting informed about anything that malefically affects our sexual energy, our ability to say yes, no, maybe, is now building up to people setting standards like, no, that you can't do. No, that we don't accept. Because they're going to go with local societies, and aside of the violence, they're going to try and integrate things. And also, when we talk about the susceptibility to violence, if people already are people pleasers in the sense that they don't say yes, no, and maybe according and they don't accommodate for the sedna people, then it's easier to, so you have to invest less effort in making them traumatic. You have to invest less effort in making them obey. Whereas when a person obeys, and this is where I want to tell you for my next story. I told you about my teeth and that I'm tending to my teeth, and so my teeth wanted names. When I put Achille on it, they wanted names of people, and I was a bit reluctant because I wanted to expose for the structure, but that I guess it was time to take for the personal accountability. One of the names I told you was Ido Nevo. Today I read about a soldier, dead soldier. His name was Ido, and this soldier, he died, I don't know if he died in Lebanon or where, or Gaza. And this soldier, basically, his sister speaks and she tells about him. And one of the things she tells about him was that he was the first person. Nobody could say anything to him because he was going for his way. He was going for his way, he has his own mindset. Nobody could say yes, no, maybe, okay? We asked Shirley, so why was he going for the war? Because people believe they are saving the people inside the tribe, okay? So from their perspective, they are saving family, because there was invasion. So it was not high commander or something like that. It was a soldier, and you're not exposed to the high command. I don't know the family, but not exposed to the high command. And mandatory army service, which people are indoctrinated to believe we defend the tribe. So it seems like the right thing to do. And so for this character of the person is he would go and always fend for what he believes in. Nobody could say to him, and he was not a people pleaser, but also when they will fight, he was the first to go. So he was not afraid of death, and so she believes that he didn't die with a lot of suffering. And now I cannot help but look at this story and see, I said a name so that I will not see every person named Ido or named Itamar or named Chani, okay? She's a holistic healer that basically betrayed me, okay? I don't know if she was doing it for the cloud or if it was her beliefs or whatnot. Or MK Ultra, okay? It can also be like mind control and stuff. That's not the only thing she did. She did a lot of good things as well. But the thing is that so that I will not have like see that name and say, okay, for this name I've seen here a person with that name that had completely other story. And again, I don't know this person, but it's like you're shown when you go and you're there and you take the action, you're shown something that will alchemize any trauma you would have surrounding what is not the actual issue. So it's not the name of the person, it's not that he was soldier or not soldier. And in that way, we should not be afraid. Can I give you this teaching of this dead soldier from his sister, okay? Named also Ido. We should not be afraid to or be courageous to stand for our rights, to stand for our sovereignty. Because even if you die, you might not suffer so much because you were courageous than the suffering of fear. Ra in Aries is very supportive of that, okay? And so this is something you want to remember in a time where we are, where Jupiter is exactly on where would be the Ketu in 2030. And this is the time where we negotiate, we mitigate. You think about a crisis happen on the land. How do people respond? So some people say, I'm going to raise my vibration by going to the church and praying to Jesus every day. Some people say, well, the church is molesting children and torturing them and making human sacrifices, so I will not give my 2 pennies to the church, but I will connect with Jesus directly, who maybe was expendable child himself, who knows. Some people say, oh, I must wear this clothes that cover my body because I was not modest and so on. But some people, like me, say we have to accommodate if a woman cannot live alone in a village, it means that all the babies are born from rape. Okay, and so each and every person has their own chance to do applied religion. What do we change in our spirituality? What do we emphasize in our spirituality, or maybe we're more outspoken in order to create that common ground? Because when 2030 comes and people are supposed to comply with the one world religion, what would it look like? We have a lot of effect on that. If I do not consent to be in a place where I have to cover my skin, where it's not comfortable by weather to cover my skin, or expected to give children when the conditions for me to give birth were not met by me, or where it's expected to be normal that children are kidnapped and sacrificed, okay? Those things are not okay, and we have a good chance for reset, because many things are now exposed. And so the interference, every person has their own way of creating that interference. But what we cannot say is that things are not exposed. We cannot say that we didn't hear about Epstein, or about Puff Daddy, or about the people that went to the parties, or about the funds, okay, for about Bank of America and what it owns, Rabobank and what it owns, or about whistleblowers like Ronald Bernard, like Anneke Lucas, like Imagination Podcast. We cannot say that the truth is not out there. I believe I'm half Dutch, and the story of Trudy Verstegen. In Israel, there's Sol Chiron, but in Netherlands, it's Trudy Verstegen. The children were taken from welfare, and she began to expose everybody and bring in the witnesses like Lars and so on. And she begins to expose for the names, and then one of the names she said was Peter, and I was like, which Peter? Which of course she didn't answer me, but the answer actually came from Royce, the child of Peter R. de Vries, where he talked about something to do with his father and so on, the Corvinaut case on RTL, and then he shows for the pictures, which was fascinating, and a piece of history and a piece of family history for there, and almost family history, because it's just like that's I encountered this, for Peter when I was homeless in Netherlands, which is my fatherland, and received the stuff about children and how to avoid for kidnapping of children and so on, because that was very relevant. And it was right after the scandal began with Rutte's government, okay, for the kidnapping of the children through taxation, which would eventually lead, with only 2023, he would end his role as prime minister. But again, they didn't impeach him, like it's entirely Tweede Kamer, and so on. And then I see Royce speaking on RTL and showing with the pictures, and I see Peter with Corvin out on a plane doing the two gender, and I'm like, which Peter? Oh, Peter, that did Peter, this did Peter. And and there was so much like communication about no, you don't have it. It's like, didn't want me to see this. There's so many beings that didn't want me to see this, because that would be totally embarrassing. But hey, if we're talking about, he wouldn't be able to do his that for photographer if he was not with the cult, and we know what that cult entails. And so this is how we absolutely cannot say that the truth is not written, that it's not exposed, that it's hidden from us. But then the question is, what is our point of interference? What do we do, okay, about that? Do we just say, these people were so and so and so, or do we tend to actually, for the structure and for our lineages, so this structure can change, so we no longer do things in the way where maybe humanity wasn't aware of and didn't know before, and people had no access to get outside the cult, which means housing, food. So you would think of housing, food as the refugees that need that, but you'll forget that your leaders need that, because they become the sad story, and they become the people that we didn't even know, we didn't accommodate for, because we were seeing them all the time as the people who supposedly make the decision or not. And so that was for all, all the terror that we see. And this is where now we cannot say we don't know. Now we cannot say it was hidden for us. Now we cannot say we cannot sit on the fence, in the sense that we cannot allow for these things that all of these people, including Peter, were trying to expose. Hey, there is plan to enslave humanity. And they know, because they were the slaves. There is plan to enslave humanity. We cannot say we don't know. And how it affects the real estate, how it affects what the monasteries underground, how it affects everything, and yet every person in every society has a point of interference where we say, okay, I do not consent, but it's beyond that. You cannot really have a point where your society is doing that, is kidnapping children, is sacrificing children, and you don't tend to that. At least tend to that. Genuinely. Because otherwise, as Manir Wilder said, and is absolutely correct, of course, if you mistreat children, if you mistreat women, then what will be your religion? What place has your religion if it does that? And what place it is very general? What territory? But there are things that we can argue on, of whether a person should wear more clothes, less clothes, or eat this food or that food. Okay, even if you eat meat, for example, it is reasonable that the meat, the animals that you eat, will be treated well. Even, for example, talk about child sacrifice, so that you will not idealize and think it is some sort of a shamanic ceremony where the child is given respect and is so on. No, it's torture. It's the suffering. So it's not human. It's not even human sacrifice, because ritual human sacrifice is something that is meant to give an offering. So let's say give you a baby from the village. We kill that baby and we put it on the altar, and we hope that you will mercy us because we've given you one of our own. Okay? But this is not the case, because we talk about torture and we talk about programming, and then that programming, the child will be used for espionage or for organ trade, and then for decision maker, politician, and so on, to enslave humanity. And everybody with the lineages suffer from that. And we, the people, need to provide for the right to exit violence. But when people are still turning to their leaders to do that, their leaders need more right to exit violence than we can imagine. Wilder himself, that was talking about this in Islam, is living under 24/7, basically jail, imprisonment in the name of safe house. So he knows exactly what women that escape violence go through, because that's how he treated. Okay, Peter the Vries. The reason I looked at the case beyond the fact that I was just, homeless, and then I tried channeling experience. But I saw that with the police, the way that they were offering ultimatum to him is the same thing they do to women in violence situations that escape violence. So I said he's also suffering from this. Okay, then I thought about the police, but I didn't understand for the deeper stuff. Then they blame the drug dealer, but drug dealers are afraid to go babysitting, okay, to be put in jail for harming children instead of the judges. And then, but the judges, they're also more excess of like global intelligence, and they were born into these cults. So a person grows into such situation, they grow into such corruption that and the corruption is also of the soul, because there is torture and abuse since childhood, even by the system, so that the notion of being free has to do with getting away with crime rather than a free man did not oppress another. Just, when you're truly happy, you don't even think about oppressing others. But when they need access to joy, access to actual happiness, and that is access to a soil that is not underneath all this torture and so on, everything becomes a trigger. And that is basically what people deal with in those. If you ask what is that thing that is coming for humanity, so to speak, it's basically those calls. Okay, it's basically that, and they are just derived from indigenous practices that were revived and kept alive, but unfortunately, it's like even that was inverted, and to create torture, to create suffering, to sacrifice suffering, and so on and so forth. So it is awakening also for indigenous societies to say stop. Those are, and to the level that we do that, we basically dictate what would that new world order be like. Just like that story of how Christianity took over Europe, and it was a lot of violence. Okay, there was nothing Christlich about this. And however, what the tribes that they were taking over, they were not lacking of their own. So you could say Christians were maybe learning from them upon this crusade. I don't know. But you could also see how Christianity has embedded its own symbols with the local society, and to the level that the local society had affinity with, protecting its tribe, with fending for its own people, and for allowing for people to be of its own people, the inclusivity, then we would have more and more ability to dictate what is going on, what would religion be like. If you go to Netherlands, which has a lot of dark history that we don't know, okay, you can see the Oranjekerk, which you basically have the symbols of all religions, and the pride flag. And pride flag is not uncommon in churches around Netherlands. On the other hand, unfortunately, we have not done with satanic ritual abuse. On the contrary, and this is causing a lot of harm for Netherlands. Influx of people who are affected by that as refugees, and then inability to accommodate for them, because if a Moroccan mother with a child is left in Netherlands, perhaps it's safer for her to not be there, because in Netherlands the child could be kidnapped for satanic ritual abuse or organ trade, or that they would be used to mix the blood, because people cannot procreate anymore with the incest cults. And the young son could end up like Tahi, being afraid to go babysitting, so murdering family that he knew. He knew. Okay, this is what Jupiter Gemini reminds us, that religion, philosophy, ideas have practicality, have trade around them, there is connection between applied heuristics to the idea of jury, applied philosophy to the idea of philosophy. Christ consciousness is something great to connect with, but if you put your money where your mouth is, you will soon, and I put my money where my mouth is. When I was homeless and I had €2, I put the 2 euros in the Oranje card because I said, what, is this heaven? I reach heaven, then I would already be exposed to the dark truth of where my money went and what it does for Vatican, okay? So I have to tend to that because I can't keep putting money in the, I can't be putting money on the plate or going to Sunday Mass where they do that to children. So this is also something that happens when you put your money where your mouth is. If I saw church that has all this tolerance for LGBTQ, I go in, I hear Sunday Mass, I have 2 euros, even if I'm homeless, and this is maybe some of my only 2 euros. I say I like this religious tolerance, I put my money on the plate, okay? I put my money where my mouth is. And then everything that needs to be corrected, I'm informed, so I can tend to that from place of veneration, rather than to wait some other conquerors that would tell us what Americans told indigenous Americans, okay, what basically British as refugees told to British tax slavery refugees told to indigenous Americans, which was, we are taking over this land by reasons no less noble and you were taking over your tribal fellows. Okay, but that's just incorporating slavery. We can't change the thing from the core. And if you think about Mercury is also words and the way that words play around, okay, into this. So what was done in Netherlands, of course, it's relevant to Israel. And by the way, before during COVID, there was a circumcision party for a baby that was born by a neighbor. I'm against circumcision, okay? But I didn't know what to do, and I didn't want to disrespect for the family, so I can say my own prayers and come to the ceremony, which you can criticize the choice, but also I was thinking maybe to put some energy or wish intention into it when I'm in the ceremony would be more appropriate and to respect the family. And then there was some people that wanted to go to Uman, okay, this Uman Jews, and everybody would donate in something and so on. So I said, okay, I will donate to you. Only now I think about it, I will donate to you. And I usually never do, but I thought, okay, they're just going to Uman to pray. And look what I am doing now for the correction. I live in the city where the Gur Hasidis, which basically unfortunately do this practice, and we know from Ruth Shoam's children that they're still with their pedophile father. And it's not that every person, it's just the higher ranks are doing that. The people depend on them for housing, for food. So they need right to exit violence. This is also where unionization is problematic, because we need to account for the individual. Unionization, yes, solves this problem on the level of, politique, on the level of votes. But then we still are left with the problem of the marginalized. Thank you, Mama. Oh my God, what a meal. It's so amazing. 5-star hotel. Anyway, and in this situation, I can say for now that I'm tending to that because I basically put my money where my mouth is, and I'm required to make sure for this money to go right, okay? And that is something you need to keep in mind. With these things. I also rented a flat in that place, and the makler sold half the city for these people, and eventually it exploded, okay? So 2 years it was okay, and then eventually it exploded in a certain way. And so even there, when I put my money where my mouth is, I'm getting the information so that my investments would be, I will invest the good energy in the right places. And that is, that is how Jupiter, Mercury, the mercurial Jupiter can express itself. We have the ability to divert investment. Okay, if you, for example, said, the other way, I don't put my money there. Let's say Starbucks. I know people had Starbucks. They said, I don't put money in Starbucks. Okay, then hopefully you will hear Starbucks is also a bank, and the way banking operates. You want to listen to Ronald Bernard, who is ex-top banker, which basically meant ex-top criminal. And he stopped when they had to do satanic ritual abuse for children, because he himself went through this in the church. And that's why he went to those Luciferians at the first place. And funnily enough, when he needed help, he went through near-death experience when he tried to kill himself. And he basically was saying birthing as the curation, okay, what he was receiving for that which he didn't have access to. And that was very much Christ consciousness. Okay, so and now I know he has a project to do with the beats of joy or something like that. I need to look deeper into that and see where it goes. I tend to the housing. So that is for the way that when you start moving energy around, start moving your words around, then you'd also see, for example, how many times were I talking about Peter before I began to be exposed to the hermaphrodite cults. Okay? It was like, hey, that was the energy of person that I ran into when I was in big trouble, and that was for the person I would listen to when I would want to remember my Dutch or for these things. But I'm also required to correct, okay, for what the other things, and that is a process. Okay, this is something that we go through. Think about even your relationships with people. You get to know a person and you receive from them you this and that, and then you find that they did something terribly wrong. Okay, then it's a part for you to see for how do you correct for that with grace, and also how do you see what is actually going on, because sometimes if people would, let's say, try to look information about me and say, oh, this person had a bigger loan and then they didn't return the loan and that the loan was forgiven and they got a degree and everything, they probably fooled the bank. And the actual truth is that I was working for this bank, which did not give us income unless we open a bank account in this bank. And I was working and not agreeing to tell you that I'm setting your monthly return to $400 when your expenses are $4,000 and you pay at least 11-12%, including of the prime. That will be 11-12% interest for this. And I just use the basically psychological war technique on you, which is basically I say, I do this, and you don't even listen to that. By that time, we had a long conversation, and the fact that I told you all the details in the beginning supposedly allows me to find you at the place where you're no longer listening to me, and I was supposed to do that, and said, don't do that. Later, they approved for me loan to treat my face, because I was looking to get better job and better pay. So I said, I can work on my skills, I can work on this, I don't have studies, so let's work on for my visibility, okay, my clothing, my shoes, my hair, and so on. And the stuff that some people even nag me that I will tend to sometimes. And so then I was gotten approved of loan, and I said, I don't even know why they approved this loan, but they did. It's working for high tech and so on, and they couldn't return it. Then it got stuck, and then it didn't respect for the rent, and I had to use for the credit for as long as I could, and then that was a crisis. But this crisis gave me recognition and ability to fund studies. Then by the time I finished studies or had to take a break from studies, then they would have forgiveness laws, because it all started from a pill that they were given when you had mental crisis that would cause people to display symptoms of manic depression. That's the truth about it. Anyway, if you don't have food and you don't have housing and you don't have a place to be in a space, so the dynamics at home, of course, will be such that you will be diagnosed with something if you go to seek help, and have your children taken away from you, which is why my parents didn't seek help. So you see how Jupiter, Gemini backwards is all the places. It's both important to put your money where your mouth is, and then you get the correction for what needs to be corrected. And then when you do this correction and refinement, you get a lot of good things coming your way. And this is how Jupiter is being provider of opportunities. You need to take advantage of these opportunities, but the Mercurial aspect is allowing you to refine the investment, to refine of the way and how you do things. For example, I was thinking, I had tending to my teeth, and there was a place in Jerusalem where it's religious woman, and she's dentist, she's doing both holistic and stuff like that. I was thinking to go to her. Then they asked way too much money for like the what I had to do private to look at my teeth, because I need like the photos. And then I was thinking to go to her to do my teeth and then say something about how the connection with teeth is so important to return for the children of Ruth Shoham. Apparently, that was something that would be less benefic or not in timely yet, because my own makler, which I rent from, sold apartments to all of these people. That means that something on the fiscal level has to move, to shake a bit, and shake slowly and slightly, okay, to give him the chance to adapt, to give us shock, aftershocks, to give him the chance to adapt, to give him a chance to change his ways. It was before Yom Kippur, and there was a comment on Yom Kippur. You want to watch Rumen Kolo for the Yom Kippur comet? I believe you will also have the interpretational video on Lada, but there is also, you can see for the comet. And this is very fascinating. Okay, I'm not particularly religious person. I'm Venus and Sun in Taurus. Maybe I fasted once or twice in my life. The first time I fasted, I read the Siddur and I became atheistic. Thanks to the Rambam. So, Maimonides. And so, by the way, if you look at Maimonides, I had a video on Maimonides, the importance of the integration, how through exile rather than biodiversity, he integrated with Sufi thinkers, and both had affected each other quite tremendously. So if you think about this was very funny for me, because when I was in Amsterdam, I had a Jewish woman, she told me, you can go to mosque, but you cannot go to church. And I was finding it so weird, because in the Orani Kirk I saw a Star of David and the symbol of Islam and the symbol of Christianity and the pride flag. So it seemed like the natural place for me to listen to a Sunday Mass, but I personally was also an astrologer and talked about new beginnings. Okay? That was the first time me listening to Sunday Mass. It was in Dutch. And so, of course, it was a moving experience for me. But the thing is that for these Jews, they remember the Christian in another way, and the mosques were closer. If you think about Maimonides and Sufi thinkers, then they had a closer affinity to supposedly the religion. But if all of them just stopped sacrificing children, I think it would create a tremendous connection with the divine and bring a lot of blessings on the earth itself. So I think we're done doing Jupigemini for now. I think you kind of got the feel of how things go when you practice that. It's an abundance of opportunities of the connection between religion and children, religion and wealth, religion and trade, religion and justice, the court, religion and kind of paperwork, your beliefs and your skin. Apparently, Jupiter is ruling Saturn, but Mercury has to do with the skin, the teeth as well, because it's our nervous system. And so you see how tending to that is really tending to all these things, so much so that when you have a deceased person or the children looking at the attic and looking at things and stuff like that, I was feeling things and I was receiving things that I didn't understand. And when I'm speaking, that creates a ripple effect as well, for a person that I did not know in person. So this is something that's just so fascinating when you turn to lineages and motherlands and stuff like that, because for me Gemini is the fourth house. But for you it can be the eighth house, and then what I said about investment can be very, very relevant to you. Or you have an investment, or your investment didn't yield. You might be getting now chances and opportunities to refine for your investments, to refine. Okay, if your company doing satanic ritual abuse, so you understand you cannot expect that to yield, let's say, retirement. And we have a chance to correct this thing. I said a lot about Pluto in Saturn sign, that this is the time where, if you think about biblical times, or I don't know what would be the indigenous equivalent, then this is where we change the moral from the parents did wrong and the teeth of the children suffer, to what the parents did no longer affecting the children. Why no longer affecting the children? Because of a change for our behavior as humanity. And people look to the Bible to say, oh, we should do like that. And this is one way of looking at it. Another way, if we look even way before the Bible, we look the sadness story, then thinking about the treatment to the marginalized is basically how society is treated upon invasion. And now all societies upon invasion, because this is a global reset. By the way, something about China. Sphere and Sundries did a Sun Without Sin talisman, which interestingly I saw on, the full thing was out for everybody on a Monday, and this is sun that involves the water element and involves the moon, so that's something you might want to check out. I don't have like a code or something that, but this is very interesting, and they call it Sun Without Sin. Now in Hebrew, and they know Hebrew, sin is actually China, which is considered the land of the rising sun. Okay, so they had their own sun in mind, which is important enough, and of course is more important than China. But upon this, I saw something this week. I was bothered by the death vents in China. The tourists are not exposed, but the citizens are. And on the other hand, Chinese people, when they receive channeling, they receive calming messages from leaders, which I got to experience, by the way, not from Chinese leaders, but I got to experience after tending to political assassination prevention, as there was this weird shit with Iran. So I actually got to experience that support, and it's like somebody's keeping you stable within this. And I guess because I'm tending to expandable children, it checks up the things politically, but it also coming from benevolent. It's a benevolent intervention and not a malefic intervention. So I guess that's why. And so when it comes to China, I received that the children, the youth is having like a nursing homes because they are sick of life. So as we come to, we think about the BRICS, or we think about integrating, North Korea, we should talk about it, China, Russia. Yes, with Russia, I know that there was plan to force people to say it's okay to rape people to have more babies, and this is, again, I don't think necessarily coming from Putin. I think it's more from the hermaphrodite cults, and we need to give assistance to liberate Russia from that. We have Elijah that was a spy, but not with Putin, with the USSR, and they would rape women, so to make them able to have sex without love, and then to use them as espionage. But the thing is that if you're not if let's say you want to be spy, okay, if you're not connected to your sexual energy, you are more susceptible to not do job correctly, okay, to betray, because basically you have been betrayed by your state, and this is a telos for it, unless you recover, for it to change. So espionage is about releasing energy block. It's Neptunian work, is releasing energy block to peace, abundance, and serenity. When that is inverted, then basically the job of intelligence is harmed. And so so this is something we need to keep in mind, that we don't say Putin, but we think about the entire process. Because Putin, for Russia, he did good infrastructure, which means he curated the Chiron in his own fourth house, that's Capricorn, with infrastructure. So that is something, okay, also to keep in mind. And when it comes to China, China brought us mandate of the heaven. For China, we know that dictators cannot be prolonged because the mandate of the heaven would take them down. Okay? By the way, I also heard about this in academia from this Dr. Ido Nevo. Okay? Was he Mason or not? I don't know, but definitely intelligence. And so, anyway, okay, all of them are, you understand, it's about ranking, it's not about any other thing. But the thing is that the way China does mandate of the sky is, or mandate of the sun, or the sky, yes, mandate of the sky, is basically that, and this is why we have the solar eclipse affecting leaders, which was known all across the board in all kinds of ancient societies. But they see, for mostly, that the sky punishes the land, and this is where the yin-yang is inverted. It gets out of balance, which is probably to do with the global cults rather than the local, okay, because this is an inversion on the actual teaching of the mandate of the sky, which very likely is original Chinese, but we're not exposed to that, because this is the truth, okay? It's very easy for these elements to see how it works, and because life itself is not to punish. Trees need the freeze, they need the cold, and then the defreezing, the coolness, the melting, the water that comes in the spring. And this is, for humanity, it seems like a punishment, and that is perhaps how we got the inversion. But Chinese are not stupid. They understand the man is one particle of this giant nature and society, and so I believe when this infiltration is corrected, this is better for China, because when the yin, okay, when women suffer from this, or when it's hidden torture, okay, like the dead vans and so on, the cars, something like connectivity, Venus, then this, what it causes is basically, people think about the Falun Gong. Falun Gong are Masons, and at the higher rank, they themselves do the trade, and then they blame it on China. Okay, it's the same global called thingy that cuts dividends to Vatican. So if you think that the BRICS is threatening America, it's threatening the people in America, it's not threatening the Vatican. That's the thing, or Mecca. And so for the problems for the women are not treated right, it balances, is applying the inversion of sky punishes the land, which is in fact not something the sky is ever allowed to do. Okay, you cannot punish the water, you cannot punish the soul, you will not have housing, you will not have agriculture, and now the youth, which is considered the youthful, the feminine, the Venusian, is basically depleted, and so we have nursing houses for the youth. Okay, which is taken over. It's taken over China, and I believe is more infiltration of China than original local Chinese. Because there were many, there were both good things and there were bad things. And for this to be the common ground, it must serve somebody that this youth is depleted and subjected to nursing houses and to human trade. So that is something that I kind of recently discovered that is going on in China upon talking, because I talked about the BRICS, and BRICS is money. Okay, I was looking at the BRICS and seeing what's going on. So you see, the information is coming more. This is jupigemini. Okay, you focus on something and then you get opportunities, but also if your focus is not correct, you can get chances to refine for this focus. Just like I talked about Putin, then immediately I had to refine and correct for what they did with the espionage before Putin, and because that would be blame on Putin, but you fully You can be certain of that. So, and same with the hermaphrodite cults. This is where we're still at the set in the story. We're just still at the set in the story. The more we accommodate, the more we're inclusive, the more respectful, the yes, no, and maybe of people, and the sovereignty of people. This is where the entire common ground for the world reset will be reset to something that is better for humanity. Okay, otherwise it requires like enlightenment people say we cannot anymore. So yes, thank you for watching.